Welcome to our channel. Today, we discuss one of the most unsettling, fascinating, and controversial questions humanity has ever dared to ask. What if we cure aging by 2040? Not slow it down. Not add a few healthy years. But actually cure it. Imagine waking up one morning knowing your body will no longer decay, your cells will no longer betray you, and death by old age has quietly been removed from the human contract. It sounds like a miracle, right? The ultimate medical victory. But as tempting as immortality, or something very close to it, might seem, curing aging wouldn't arrive as a clean triumph. It would unleash ethical chaos on a scale we've never experienced before. Let's start by grounding this idea in reality. Because this isn't just science fiction anymore. Right now, scientists don't officially call aging a disease, but many of them treat it like one. Researchers are already experimenting with senolytics, drugs that remove old, malfunctioning cells. Others are working on genetic reprogramming, essentially telling adult cells to behave like younger ones again. AI is accelerating drug discovery, and biotech startups are pouring billions into the idea that aging is a solvable engineering problem. If progress continues at its current pace, curing aging by 2040 is no longer absurd. It's speculative, but plausible. And that's exactly why we need to talk about what happens next. The first thing most people think about is personal. You. Your body. Your life. If aging is cured, a 40-year-old could remain physically and mentally 40 for decades, maybe centuries. Diseases like Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, heart failure, and many cancers would dramatically decline. Parents wouldn't slowly fade away. Grandparents wouldn't become fragile shadows of who they once were. Human suffering would be reduced on a massive scale. For many, this sounds like the most moral thing humanity could ever do. If we can stop suffering, aren't we obligated to? But here's where the cracks start to form. Because curing aging doesn't just save individuals, it fundamentally reshapes society. Death has always been the great equalizer, the invisible force that keeps generations moving, power shifting, and cultures evolving. Remove aging, and suddenly the entire structure of civilization starts to wobble. Think about population first. If people stop dying from old age but continue to have children, population growth explodes. Not gradually. Exponentially. Cities become denser, resources strain, housing becomes scarce, and environmental pressure skyrockets. Governments would be forced to intervene in reproduction. Who gets to have children? How many? Under what conditions? The idea of state-controlled reproduction sounds dystopian. But it becomes almost unavoidable in a world where death no longer clears space for new life, and that raises an uncomfortable question: is curing aging only moral if we also limit birth? And if so, who decides? Politicians? Scientists? Algorithms? Suddenly, the cure for aging doesn't feel like pure freedom anymore. It feels like trading one form of suffering for another. Now let's talk about inequality, because this is where ethical chaos truly ignites. The first versions of an aging cure would almost certainly be expensive. Extremely expensive. Which means the rich get it first. Imagine a world where billionaires stop aging while everyone else continues to grow old and die. Wealth inequality would harden into biological inequality. The rich wouldn't just own more, they would live longer, accumulate centuries of experience, compound their power, and dominate institutions indefinitely. In that world, social mobility collapses. How do young people compete with elites who have had 150 years to build networks, influence, and capital? How do new ideas take root when the same individuals run governments, corporations, and media for centuries? Even if the cure eventually becomes cheaper, the early advantage would permanently reshape power structures. Immortality, or near immortality, becomes the ultimate inherited privilege, and inheritance itself becomes a nightmare. If people don't die, when do assets transfer? When do positions open up? When does leadership change? Entire economic systems are built on the assumption that humans have a limited lifespan. Retirement, pensions, promotions, career ladders, none of these make sense anymore. Do people work for 200 years? Do they retire at all? Or does retirement become a luxury only the wealthy can afford? Now imagine being 25 in a world where your boss is 180 years old and has no intention of stepping aside. Imagine being told to wait your turn when there may never be a turn. Frustration would boil over. Generational conflict would reach levels we've never seen. Youth movements wouldn't just demand reform, they would demand mortality. That sounds shocking, but it's logical. In a world without aging, death becomes political. Some people would start arguing that dying is necessary for fairness. That mortality is essential for justice. That immortality is tyranny. The debate wouldn't be about science anymore. It would be about whether humans are even meant to live forever. Then there's the psychological side, which is often overlooked. Humans evolved knowing life is finite. Deadlines shape meaning. Scarcity gives urgency. If you know you have endless time, how do you choose what matters? Do relationships lose intensity when you know you have centuries together? Or do they become more fragile because commitment feels less necessary? Motivation itself could change. Why rush to achieve anything if there's always tomorrow? Or the next decade? Or the next century? Some people might flourish, reinventing themselves over and over, mastering multiple careers, exploring art, science, and philosophy in ways never before possible. Others might stagnate, trapped in endless procrastination, haunted by a sense of purposelessness. Depression and existential crises could increase, not decrease, in a world where time never runs out. And what about identity? Are you the same person after 150 years? After 300? Memory becomes an issue. The human brain wasn't designed to store centuries of experiences. Would we need memory editing? Selective forgetting? If you erase parts of your past to make room for the future, are you still you? Or are you slowly becoming a sequence of different people wearing the same body? Then comes the legal chaos. Laws assume aging. Age limits define adulthood, consent, responsibility, and authority. In a world without aging, what does age even mean? Is someone who has lived 200 years but looks 30 treated differently under the law? Do we redefine age by time lived or biological condition? And how do we punish crimes? Is a 500-year prison sentence still meaningful when people live indefinitely? Punishment itself becomes ethically murky. If someone commits a crime and can live forever, does justice demand eternal punishment? Or does rehabilitation become the only moral option? Entire legal philosophies would have to be rewritten from scratch. Religion and culture would also be shaken to their core. Many belief systems are built around the idea of mortality, afterlife, reincarnation, or divine judgment after death. If death becomes optional or extremely rare, how do these beliefs adapt? Some religious groups might reject the cure entirely, seeing it as humanity overstepping its bounds. Others might embrace it as a divine gift. Conflicts wouldn't just be ideological, they could become violent. Culturally, art and storytelling would change. So much of human creativity is rooted in loss, impermanence, and the passage of time. Love stories, tragedies, epics all rely on the fact that moments are fleeting. What happens to art when nothing has to end? Do we lose something essential? Or do we evolve into new forms of expression we can't yet imagine? Now let's zoom out to geopolitics, because curing aging wouldn't happen evenly across the globe. Some countries would gain access earlier than others. Nations with advanced biotech industries would suddenly possess the most valuable resource in human history: time. Immortal scientists, immortal generals, immortal leaders. Power imbalances would intensify. Wars could be fought not just over land or oil, but over longevity technology itself. And here's a darker thought: what if governments restrict access intentionally? What if aging cures are used as rewards for loyalty, obedience, or citizenship status? Live forever if you comply. Age and die if you don't. Surveillance states would gain a terrifying new lever of control. Freedom itself could become biologically conditional. Even environmental ethics come into play. A planet filled with people who don't die consumes indefinitely. Sustainability becomes far harder when population turnover stops. Some ethicists argue that curing aging without solving environmental collapse is profoundly irresponsible. Others argue the opposite, that longer-lived humans might care more about the future because they'll actually be around to experience it. The truth could go either way, and finally, we have to confront the deepest question of all: should we cure aging, even if we can? Just because something is scientifically possible doesn't mean it's morally wise. Fire gave us warmth and weapons. Nuclear power gave us energy and annihilation. Every transformative technology forces humanity to grow ethically as fast as it grows intellectually. And historically, we've struggled to do that. Curing aging by 2040 wouldn't just change medicine. It would redefine what it means to be human. It would force us to decide whether life's value comes from its length or its limits. Whether fairness matters more than freedom. Whether death is a flaw to be fixed or a boundary that gives life meaning. Maybe the future isn't about living forever. Maybe it's about choosing how long is enough. Or maybe humanity will leap forward anyway, consequences be damned, and adapt as we always have, messily, painfully, creatively. One thing is certain: if aging is cured, the world after will not resemble the world before. The question isn't whether we're ready technologically. It's whether we're ready ethically. If this topic made you think, challenged your assumptions, or left you feeling a little unsettled, that's the point. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Would you take the cure if it existed? Do you think humanity should? And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the future of humanity, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next.